This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
No Stormy Buonantony today. Jonathan Von Tobel rolling solo, but don't worry, we got a great slate of guests that we will get to throughout the course of the next 2 hours. Really looking forward to it. For those who don't remember, Stormy B out on the road taking in Iowa State and Arizona this weekend. Now, she's doing work, so taking it in implies that she's got some time off. I do think she probably could have taken the show and maybe given us a couple of minutes today. Flight's not till 11:45, but who am I to criticize the great Stormy Buonantony? It's a joke. She'll be back, of course, on Sunday as we get you ready for kickoff in the NFL for Countdown to Kickoff. Before we get to it, though, we'll usually start with our rundown. Do want to note that we do have an event. And a surprise, I shouldn't say surprisingly, because I don't want to sound like somebody who is, uncultured or somebody who assumes that just because I don't have that much interest in it, the masses don't. But a very popular event, it would seem, here at Circa, the Ryder Cup. There are a lot of people here in the book behind us going up to Stadium Swim that look like they're here to partake in watching the Ryder Cup. Well, hopefully they are not cheering for the Americans because they're off to a rough start at this point right now. But if the afternoon, right, we're in the afternoon tee-off times, whatever it is, we do have a couple of rounds that are going right now. The Americans do currently trail 3-1 for the entire event. I actually thought it was really interesting. So we were talking about this. Taylor Zarger was with us earlier in the week, and Steve Sands was on with Tim Murray and Matt Humans on VSiN Primetime earlier this week. Both said the exact same thing, which was if this was like true neutral, kind of like a football game, who would you make? Europeans favored, no question about it. And right now, those smart folks who felt like that was the case, if you bet them to raise the trophy, well, they're looking good right now, up 3-1 for the event. And currently, you got two matchups that are all square, and then we got it split right now in terms of one up for the Euros and the one up for the Americans. We'll keep our eye on that as we move forward, but we do have to move on to a Football Friday, so let's get started.
It's time for the top headlines and topics of the day. This is The Rundown.
We do what we usually do here on a Friday, another edition of the Market Power Ratings, another interesting, fantastic edition of what the market deems these teams are. And I will say, so last week we had a new title of worst team in the NFL, according to the market. Well, that title has been relinquished, and it is let's just say it's an old name that we're used to. The New Orleans Saints are now your worst team in the National Football League yet again. But we also have, and I don't think this would shock anybody, a new top-rated team in the National Football League. The last 3 weeks has been the Baltimore Ravens at the top of the market power ratings. Not anymore. I think you can guess who it is. We'll tell you who it is coming up a little bit later. Also on the docket today, as we get ready for football, not just college, but week 4 of the NFL, we have a lot of great guests to get us ready for it as well. We're going to talk with Mike Palm in a little bit about some contest implications. Will Hill will have his best bets, as well as Zach Cohen and Chris Vasili, as they will look ahead, of course, to the week of football, both in the NFL and in college. But last and certainly not least, a sneaky thriller on Thursday night. We took it in the second half over in my abode. I got to watch the first half earlier this morning. And then, of course, a lot of people maybe tuning out at halftime as the Seahawks led 14-3. But Cardinals come back with some help by the Seattle Seahawks to tie the thing up, but a kicking violation and a late field goal gives Seattle not only a 23-20 win, but a 3-1 record to start the NFL season. And I think that's where we have to begin here. This Seahawks team, we have talked about this on this show, the fact that, hey, look, this team is on paper looking relatively impressive. Defensively, they could be very good. And how many times did I ask the question to Stormy? And it's not like it was a question she could answer or that I had the answer to. But my question to her all the time, all the offseason, was what if the Seahawks get the version of Sam Darnold that played in 15 of the games that he played last season for Minnesota, that was at an MVPs type level that helped that team to almost win a number 1 overall seed in the NFC. And through the early going so far, that has been the case. But first, let's hear from Mike McDonald. As you see the final score there and some of the top performers if you're watching on YouTube TV or vsin.com. McDonald talked about this big win for this team as they continue to show up in these situations.
Arizona played a good game. It's a good football team we played. We know that. And they did a good job of staying in the game and giving themselves a chance to win. Having said that, we didn't play our best game. And we had opportunities, I think, to put the game away, throughout really the second half. And there's a lot of learning experiences, too, that we're going to be able to take from this game so we can improve. But the good news is we figured out a way to win the game, which, after week 1, we felt like we had an opportunity to win that game. We didn't figure it out. So I feel like our team's growing. We're getting better. And just really proud of our guys in the fight and really the effort this week, to get ready to go play their best football. So
absolutely right on McDonald's part, and that this probably should not have been a contest that was particularly close. If you just look at the traditional box score stats, it would tell you that Seattle completely outperformed the Arizona Cardinals over the course of that game. 20 first downs to just 18 for Arizona, but the big difference is here. 384 yards in total, 6 yards per play, a net yards per play for the game of +2. For the Seattle Seahawks. We're just completely dominating this performance, and yet, because of some mistakes, because of a missed kick that could have made it a 2-possession game, maybe some lack of, if you would call it, killer mentality on some of these drives in which you could have put the foot on the throat, Seattle ultimately found themselves in a position to potentially blow a game in which they had thoroughly dominated. And I do think it comes down to a few things here. First, obviously, the missed kick that would have set this up as a 10-point game late in that contest. But Mike Macdonald, I do think, got away with one. It's not as bad as what Shane Steichen did at the end of the Denver and Indy game, in which he played for a 60-yard field goal and got bailed out because his kicker completely missed it, but also got that leverage call that gave them 15 extra yards and another crack at it. But if you looked at the end of this game, I was really surprised the way Macdonald handled it. After a missed field goal, they get the ball back courtesy of a kicking violation. We can have the conversation about whether or not we like the kicking rules, whatever. Either way, the rules are what they are at this point right now. They get the ball with one timeout down to their 40-yard line because of the penalty. They ultimately get down to the Arizona 34-yard line with a timeout and 18 seconds left, and they just run up the ball up the middle with Zach Charbonnet, let the clock burn, and then call their final timeout to set up a 52-yard field goal for a guy who had just missed a 53-yard field goal in the drive previously. Was pretty surprised. Figured you would probably try to work the middle of the field, give Sam Darnold a shot to give them a few more yards. They get away with it, but just file it away. Defensive coaches tend to be pretty conservative when it comes to those situations. He even said it in the postgame presser, talked about, like, hey, you didn't want to do anything foolish. I feel like you could do something to maybe set yourself up in a little bit of a better situation, but they are now 3-1. They are undefeated on the road. Just one loss for Mike Macdonald, I believe, in these last few road games for him. He has done a very good job with the Seattle team away from home. And now you look at this big picture for Seattle. Many, again, thought this was going to be a plucky group. This is 3-1 in a wide-open division. The 49ers seem to be on the razor's edge with all the injuries, and their undefeated record built somewhat on paper. The Rams, I think, are a legitimate team. A lot of us fear, I'm one of them, that maybe that speaking of being held together by paper, maybe that back for Matthew Stafford is just that. But they're a very good team, especially up front on defense. But this looks like a division that is going to be a 3-horse race. And if you look at those division odds, I know Stormy brought this up, was it why not Wednesday? 6-1 to win the division. Well, the Seahawks are now plus 340 to win the division. And let's talk a little bit about Sam Darnold really quickly, because the dude has been great. 2 stats for you here. Since the beginning of the 2024 season for Sam Darnold, a 17-4 record as a starter, 5,224 passing yards, 40 touchdowns to 14 interceptions, and a passer rating of 103.1. The guy has been great since the beginning of last year, and as the sample size grows farther and farther away from Kevin O'Connell, maybe Darnold's figured something out in his career. We have seen this now time and again for these late blossoming quarterbacks, especially around these last few years. The other part about last night, though, it wasn't the sexiest performance on paper, but this tells you how important Darnold's performance was from PFF on throws of 10 or more yards downfield against the Arizona Cardinals last night. 9 of 11, 165 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and a passer rating of 149.1. Darnold was brilliant. So you tell me why, and I added this morning. Call me prisoner of the moment. I think that this is going to be a team that could build up some wins in a division that is perfectly winnable here. Would you be surprised if I told you that the Seahawks were 10 or 11 wins with an NFC West title? It wouldn't be a shock at this point. Darnold's 90-1, 80-1 to win MVP. I put some on it this morning after last night. I think it's worth it. The guy has been playing out of his mind. The sample size is growing, and you could say he's only a regular season quarterback. Well, it's a regular season award. Even if postseason failings come into this a little bit later in the year, I don't think that's going to be the case. And the Seahawks are a legitimately good team. They have one of the better receivers in Jackson Smith-Njigba, who showed up late in that game after getting a death stare from one of the officials. But he was brilliant down the stretch. Big pass down the right sideline from Darnold to Jackson Smith-Njigba on the penultimate drive. You look at the schedule for them moving forward after this week. Extended break to get ready for Tampa, who's got to make the road trip all the way out there to Seattle. At Jacksonville and home versus Houston, 2 very winnable games in an AFC South that looks abysmal before you head into your bye week. This is a schedule in which this Seahawks team has a lot of opportunities in front of them. And I think Darnold can put up some pretty big numbers, and this team overall looks like it's going to be a real threat in the NFC and in the NFC West as a whole. We have to have some time, too, to discuss Arizona. One of the stats that we had talked about yesterday in previewing this game was the Kyler Murray lack of aggression downfield. Going into the game yesterday, Murray's average depth of target was just 6.1 yards downfield. His ADOT yesterday, again, 6.1 yards downfield. The Cardinals' offense has been really poor. The average is 4.9 yards per attempt as a whole. Total just 200 yards through the air. This has been something that has not really come to fruition in any way, shape, or form. This blossoming of Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr. was fine at times, obviously caught the touchdown last night as well. But now you look at what the Arizona Cardinals are, a team that many thought, and shout out to Stormy one more time, right? She was not very big on this team, and it looks like she has nailed this through 4 weeks because this group has looked very average through 4 games, and there really seems to be no turning it around, especially from an offensive standpoint. We can see, but here's the thing. Unlike some of these groups that we're talking about where, hey, at least you face some tough opponents, the Cardinals have not faced this slate of defenses much like we talk about with Cam Ward, who has faced some of the best defenses in the NFL. They got games against the Cardinals, or excuse me, the Saints, the Panthers. This has not been a group that has been really tested with some of the defenses they have faced, and yet here they are still struggling to find some semblance of an efficient offense. So win total, 7.5. To make the playoffs, they're 3-1. Can't have a lot of faith in this team at this point right now, given what we've seen through the first 4 weeks. And by the way, thank God we used them already in Survivor. Could you imagine having down the stretch, having to decide in a week, having to use this team against some of the projections have us like 7-point favorites against the Titans? I don't think so, my friend. All right, we'll take our break. We come back. Very excited to chat with Mike Palm. His property's buzzing. Man, the Ryder Cup's going on. There's a lot of people here early on a Friday. Get his thoughts on that, the college slate, and more when he joins us next here on Money Moves.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
All right, welcome back in. It is Money Moves. No Stormy Buonantony. She is off on the road. She will have Iowa State and Arizona this week. But we have a lot of great people that we get to talk to every single Friday. And among the best, Mike Palm, who is with us here on the program as usually is on Fridays now, VP of Ops here, the D, Golden Gate, and Circa. Mike, we appreciate it. Before we get into anything, I wanted to ask, because I am dying to get down, and I think I'm going to check this out today. The Golden Gate, is this really legitimate? Can I go down there just for an open bar from 6 to 7, hang out and get a drink and maybe some free play?
Yeah, not just a drink, the free play guaranteed as well, Jonathan. 6 to 7 o'clock. You can register starting at 4:30. They'll give you a wristband so you'll be eligible for the open bar at 6. And then you pick from a barrel of envelopes that have anywhere from $5 in free play to $1,000 in free play. And, you know, there's a 1,000, but there's 500s, 250s, some hundreds, bunch of 50s, bunch of 25s. So we've done one full week of it. It started last Friday. It goes every night. And the average number of people that have participated has been a little over 400. We thought maybe 150 to 200. In fact, we had our biggest night last night with over 440. So it's been a big hit.
Cool. And how long is this going on? Or you guys just haven't established yet how long it's going to go?
In perpetuity for now.
Hell yeah. All right. I might be there in perpetuity every single night. Mike Palm with us. All right. Well, let's hit on a couple of things. I wanted to start with some NFL topics because we do have a really interesting Survivor week coming up. I have seen some projections for how many will use Buffalo this coming weekend. I think it was Derek who was on earlier this week on VSiN and said it'll set a record. What percentage of the pool do you think will have the Buffalo Bills this weekend in Survivor?
Yeah, the biggest selection ever was Denver week 1, but obviously that's because 18,700 entries and 7,000 were on Denver. Now we have 13,800. I think it'll be close to 8,000 will be on Buffalo. I know some that have them won't use them, but if you look at the schedule, this week, next week, and then where? I know things happen in the course of a season that changes things, but it's kind of use them now if you haven't. I think if you don't, you know, there's some interesting other choices. I think Houston will get used. As bad as they've been hosting Tennessee. And I think the Packers are a sneaky Survivor pick as well.
See, so my two choices for this, when Stormy and I were discussing it, I think it would be, because I'd used Buffalo, we have used Buffalo, so that's going to be factoring into the equation. You mentioned Green Bay. In 2 weeks, I think it is, they have Carolina coming up. And that, to me, was one where I was heavily debating whether or not you want to use it. You also have, after your bye, Cincinnati, which some projections have Green Bay as a 12-point favorite. So for Green Bay, there's some options. For Houston, I mean, Mike, this is going to be the biggest favorite they're going to be all year long, barring some sort of crazy injury situation against an opponent further down the road.
Yeah, they'll probably just be the second most selected team. I know Denver will be in the mix, but just think about this. This Dallas defense made Russell Wilson look great. It's just hard not to play against them.
Yep, would agree. All right, let's point, again, Survivor entries due Saturday, so we'll see what those are. You can tune in here at VSiN, VSiN.com or YouTube TV. Matt Brown, Mike Samish do a great job on the contest show, breaking everything down over the weekend when all the numbers are in. All right, Mike, one of the more interesting college football games, got to get your thoughts. Last week you were on, Iowa had a matchup with Rutgers. Now, this is pretty interesting this weekend as they get to take on Indiana. How are we feeling about this? Because they are over a touchdown dog at home against the Hoosiers. I understand it to an extent, but to me it feels a little rich. What do we make of what Iowa's facing this week against Cignetti and the Hoosiers?
Well, I didn't think they deserved to be a road favorite last Friday night. Maybe they didn't. I mean, they run the kickback, and it's an even game back and forth. But they got the job done. We opened this 4.5 on Sunday, and now they bet it to the other side of 7. A lot of public money on Indiana off the 70-point performance against Bielema. By the way, Fox ought to sue Bielema for taking all the luster off their big noon game this week. But, every year somebody goes into Kinnick, a top 5, a top 10 team, and loses. Usually it's in October, late October, November. Could it be in late September this year? 7.5 seems a bit much. I'm not going to play the game, but if you told me Iowa won, I wouldn't be shocked.
Did you have anything this weekend in college football that really stuck out to you? I mean, obviously, it's a really big weekend.
I think Oregon goes into Happy Valley and wins that game outright. I took 3.5, but in these close games, small game James never comes up big. And anytime he has to play a team that can hang with him, they just, even look at the playoffs last year. They win by margin. And then when they get in a close game with Notre Dame, he screws it up. I think Oregon's just as good. And I think in a tight game, Oregon will get the nod there. And then just getting away from college football for a second, I really like the Aces. I was
going to get there.
I think Becky Hammond figured out how to use Asia. In game 1, they just played straight up, and they let Aaliyah Boston guard her face-to-face. She didn't let Asia back her down. She did a tremendous job. All of a sudden, game 2, now Becky Hammond's moving Asia around. She's bringing her out to the three-point line. A lot of pick and roll with Jackie Young. I think she found the elixir to what Indiana's trying to do to Asia. And I just don't think a lot of these girls were signed in the last month right off the street, trying to play up against the former champs. I just don't think Indiana has enough horses.
So where do you think this number ends up? Because you guys opened 4.5 and initially went to 3.5. I was kind of surprised. I mean, I guess the market was just blindly playing the zigzag here, but I would tend to agree with you that I think Las Vegas has kind of figured out what they want to do against this plucky Indiana team.
Yeah, when I laid 4, I said, could it go down? I thought it might go up. I guess everybody thinks about Indiana at home. They have the best home court advantage. They beat Vegas by 30 at home earlier in the year without Caitlin. I bet before the series, Aces plus a game and a half, it was still plus $3. So, I mean, if the Aces lose one of these games, I win my series bet if Indiana can take it to 5. So I'm in a pretty good spot right now.
All right, what do we make of Minnesota and Mercury then, since we're on this topic? Overtime win. Mercury shoot the ball pretty well in game 2. Now in this one, as we have it, you guys are sitting at 4 in favor of Minnesota, total 158.5.
The Mercury are really good. I could not lay 4 here. I have to watch. I have a future of an exact finals matchup of Lynx and Aces. So I need Minnesota for the series, but I'm worried about this game 3. That was stunning to me that they could blow a 20-point lead at home, a 20-point lead midway through the third quarter, and just really had no answers. And Phoenix just played really well and shot the 3 well. They're a good team. They really, for the most part, dominated the Liberty. They lost the game they led in most of the way in game 1. They blew them out in game 2 in New York and then covered game 3. This is a closer series than people think. So I'm going to cross my fingers and hope the Lynx can get through it.
Mike Palm with us again, Circa, the D, Golden Gate VP of Operations on the Progressive Guest Line. All right, Mike, before we get you out of here in the last 3 minutes, we do have to hit on a little bit of baseball. When we spoke last week, Tigers were still ahead in the AL Central, but now it is officially out of their hands. The Guardians in a tie with them atop with the tiebreaker. What have we made? I mean, that collapsed the other day, Mike. That was like everything we've seen boiled down to one inning. Was it that sixth inning against Cleveland where Scooble's throwing it between his legs, whatnot? What have you made of this collapse now that we're here? And can Scooble actually lose out on this AL Cy Young to Crochet, as many at the Vegas Stats and Information Network are hoping he will?
You know, John, I know. If you just look at the MVP in the American League and the Cy Young objectively, isn't it still the guys that were the big favorites? I mean, it's not the most valuable pitcher. It's the most outstanding pitcher. And do you penalize Scooble because his team may end up losing the division or may even be out? I don't know. I think WAR is still a big factor. Mm-hmm. And I think on WAR, I think Scooble's like 6'6" to 6'2" over Crochet. And Judge leads every category except home runs. And the Yankees sucked when he wasn't there. So as much as Cal Raleigh is an incredible story, isn't it still supposed to be Judge? I don't know. I have no dog in either fight. I'm just trying to look at it dispassionately.
I'm with you. I would tend to agree with you. I think, and we haven't seen this reflected in AL Cy Young, but for the MVP with the flip to Raleigh, we see this in awards all the time, Mike, where at the end of the year, there just gets this late stretch where people start building on one side, and the market, I think, gets a lot of whack and inaccurate. And here's the other thing, Mike. The other thing that Raleigh could hold over Judge's head, which was a division winner, might also not be true because the Toronto Blue Jays might blow this AL East here down the stretch.
Yeah, they're in a little bit of disarray. I don't know who they're going to – what's their rotation in the playoffs? They moved Barrios to the bullpen. He speaks to the media. I don't think you can start Scherzer. I mean, it's I don't know who the Game 3 starter is. So I kind of favor the Yankees here, even though they don't have the tiebreaker here. But I think the American League is completely wide open. And I think that whoever the 6 teams are that get in, any one of them can win it. I think in the National League, it's probably 2 teams. Probably. I can't get myself there on the Padres. I think it's Brewers, Dodgers, and that's about it in the National League.
Mike, we appreciate a couple minutes. Thank you very much, sir. And just an update, the Angels have 71 wins with a weekend series against the Astros. Come on now. Thank you, Mike.
It's amazing. All right, John, have a great weekend.
You too, at Mike Palm, Circa, up on X. We appreciate the time, as always. All right, we'll take our break. We'll get more on baseball. Just got a text from Will Hill as he is looking ahead to a big college slate, and he's going to join us on the other side. So we come back. Will be with us. Make sure, by the way, you go up to the website of VSiN.com/subscribe. 40% off the daily best bets, the betting splits, tools, data, and all of that. Use the promo code MONEY, MONEY. Sign up today at VSiN.com/subscribe.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
All right, I'm really excited. We will waste no time. By the way, a big thank you to Mike Palm for joining us just a couple of minutes ago. Very busy man, not here on property, but gave us a few minutes to talk a little bit about the weekend that will be. Talk a little Survivor, college football, and more. If you want to check it out, if you missed out on anything, replays are up at VSiN.com, or you can check out the Money Moves podcast. Like, rate, review, and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. With that, we welcome in our next guest on the Progressive Guest Line. Will Hill is nice enough to give us some time here today at Not the Will Hill up on X. Should have bet more podcast, now officially under the umbrella of the Vegas Stats and Information Network. Will, to let people in on a little bit of what's going on these last couple of weeks. You all right? Jaw's a little bit sore. You got a black eye. Last couple of weeks you come on this program, you tried to go head-to-head, mano-a-mano with me. Hasn't really gone too well.
No, it hasn't. I've learned my lesson, but I'm a humble man, believe it or not. I texted you, I think, what was it, Sunday or Monday? I said, hey, who do you like in the NFL? Because I'm not making the same mistake. I'm not stubborn. I'm not going to go head-to-head with you anymore. So I asked you who you liked. I'm going to copy off your paper a little bit. So, yeah, I've learned my lesson.
All right, well, this is then when I start crashing and burning, because it's been a strong start to the NFL season, but we'll see if it can continue. Let's talk about your boys, because that is something I like, and I think you're on the same side here. Under a field goal across the pond in Dublin against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm curious. I don't want to taint the waters here, so I want to hear your breakdown first as to what you're looking at between Vikings and Steelers this weekend.
Yeah, first off, I would just look at the first 2 wins for the Steelers, the 2 wins they have. They were outgained by 1.5 yards per play in both of them. The Jets gained 6.5 yards per play against them to the Steelers 5. And then last week they gained the Steelers gained 4 yards per play, and the Patriots were around 5.5. In those two wins, the Steelers are +5 in turnover. So a little bit of noise in those wins there for Pittsburgh. I know, Pittsburgh fans, my brother's a Steelers fan. A lot of Steelers fans say, you know what, that's what they do. They turn you over. They're not about stats. They're about winning, all that stuff. But I am a believer long-term in those stats being valuable. And I don't like the matchup from Pittsburgh's standpoint of Rodgers going against Flores. I just don't know. He can't move at this stage of his career, especially like he used to. And Flores is going to bring pressure, disguise it. And if you remember, they played right around this time last year overseas. It was when Saleh got fired, and the Vikings picked off Rodgers 3 times. That was obviously Rodgers with the Jets. So Flores against Rodgers, bad matchup. And, the stats here with Pittsburgh, not favorable. And then throw in the fact Vikings are starting to get a little bit healthier. Addison is back. Addison matters. Pair him with Jefferson. That's a really good duo. Darisaw was back last week, which I wasn't sure he was going to be. He was basically, played a clean game there at tackle. Offensive linemen aren't going to move the number too much, but they do matter. I think there's actually some hidden value in a guy like Darisaw who can be really good, especially compared to his replacement. So I just think the Vikings have the better team, the better roster. 2.5 is not a big deal to me. I'll lay it here, and I think the Vikings win.
Couldn't agree more with all points. I don't know if this is something that can be actually true given the early portion of the year, but I think the Steelers are the most fraudulent 2-1 team I've ever seen in my life. When you look at the way that those few games have gone, again, like fumbles are so random. The fact that you can get and then recover 4 fumbles in a single game that you won by 7 and have 5 total turnovers, that game last week just drove me nuts. This team has stunk all week, all year long, and I would completely agree with you. All right, let's stick with the National Football League. Will Hill with us here at Not The Will Hill up on X. Let's talk about the Ravens this week against the Kansas City Chiefs. Somebody's got to be 1-3 game, although they can technically tie and both be 1-2-1. So what do we make of this? Baltimore 2.5-point favorite on the road, juice to that side, or is there another way to attack this?
I like Ravens team total over. First off, just from a big picture standpoint, I don't think the Ravens are going to miss the playoffs. I think even if they lost this game, they would still rally and figure out a way to win 10 games. I think with Kansas City's schedule, missing the playoffs is very much on the table. I know they'll get Worthy back and eventually get Rice back, but they just don't look the part. They look very pedestrian on offense and kind of have for a long time. And with their schedule, if they're 1-3, maybe it's just not their year finally where Mahomes isn't in the AFC title game or the Super Bowl. That being said, the offense, or the unit I trust the most, I should say, in this game of the 4 is the Ravens offense. 37 points per game, 6 yards per play, second in the league only to your Indianapolis Colts. 25.5 for a team total when they're scoring in the 30s, in the 40s. And plus, they don't have a good defense now. So 4th down, anything reasonable, they're going to have to go for it, which obviously helps the team total over. So they can't afford to punt, be conservative, play field position. They don't have a good defense to rely on, so they're going to have to be ultra aggressive on offense. I think they get their 27-plus points. Kansas City has played a couple good games defensively here. Remember, the Chargers did a good job lighting them up. 3 touchdowns and 300 yards for Herbert. They scored 27 points. Last week, he kind of have to throw away. Giants didn't have a kicker. Wilson throwing the ball into the stands was ridiculous. So I think the Ravens get their points here. I like their team total over.
All right, let's head over to college as we have a great slate of games this coming weekend. Let's start in the Big Ten, the big one, Oregon, Penn State. Whiteout, right, late at night. Everybody's freaking out about what this is going to be. We'll see if Penn State can get a little revenge after losing the Big Ten championship game to the Ducks last year. What do you make of this contest, and is there another angle besides side or total here as well?
First quarter under 10.5 is my favorite play. I think Penn State, and there's a lot of conversation about this, are they playing possum on offense? They played 3 cupcakes to start their season. Maybe they're hiding some of their good plays in the playbook. I'll buy that to an extent. I'm not the biggest Drew Aller fan, so we'll see here what their offense looks like. But I think they're going to come into this game and say, you know what, we played this team in December. We ran for 300 yards. We ran for 9 yards a carry, 8 yards a carry. It was ridiculous. They're going to run the ball early. And I just think with 2 teams that haven't played anybody of significance, there's a feeling out process. This is your first kind of real game, real test, maybe some nerves. Dante Moore hasn't really been in this kind of an environment. He's played a little bit. He's got a little experience, but this is going to be a little bit of a test for him. So under 10.5, that's a key number where it's 7-3 after 1. You cash your bet and you know what? Get a couple first downs, punt for each team, and all of a sudden half that clock in the first quarter wears down. There's no 2-minute warning in the first quarter, so that clock just kind of goes. I like under 10.5. I think we get a little bit of a feeling out type of situation here in that first quarter, so I like the under.
We head to the SEC. We'll get back to the Big Ten momentarily, but Georgia and Alabama. Stormy has been singing the praises of the Bulldogs. What do you make of this one? Too short? Georgia laying 3?
I think so. I like Georgia. I hate the fact, by the way, that these two games are on at the same time. I wish they would spread them out. These games going head-to-head against each other is not ideal, but great sports weekend. Can't complain too much. I can't buy into Simpson. I watched the game against Florida State Labor Day weekend like everybody did. That was so bad, and he hasn't done anything to win me over since Wisconsin and UL Monroe. Congratulations, but let me see him do it on the road against a real team like Georgia. I know Georgia could have easily lost to Tennessee if they made a kick and they were down the whole game, all that, but Stockton showed me something. That fourth and 6 throw was really good. He threw the ball, and he threw the ball when he needed to. I just think they have a more impressive data point than anything Alabama has shown. They're at home. That's a home field that matters. I think Georgia gets it done here and wins the game by about a touchdown or so.
All right, Ohio State and Washington. Total, I think, is what you've got here. So let's hear that. But also, did you have anything on the side? Because this seems to be a very popular groupthink, if you will. A lot of smart people looking at this Washington team, but some spots are as high as 9.5 now.
Yeah, I think the last week the line was like 13.5, 14, something like that. It opened 10, and now it's under that. I actually think it might be a little cheap on Ohio State. I'm probably on an island there. As like you said, everyone loves Washington. I like the over. I'm a believer in Washington's offense. The running backs, the receivers, Damon Williams is the real deal. I think they're going to score here on Ohio State. I just don't like their defense. I don't really think they get stops. I know it's a young quarterback insane on the road in a hostile environment, all that, but I think Ohio State is going to move the ball. And if you look at this Ohio State defense that we all love, and all this Ohio State defense is great, they shut down Arch Manning in Texas. Texas ran the ball for like 170 yards against Ohio State in that opener. And since then, Texas has kind of shown maybe they aren't who we thought they were. So I don't know, like a 38-28 type of game. I think this game goes over, and I think it goes way over. That being said, if you are one of these people that likes Washington, and you could apply this to the Georgia game with Stockton, you could apply this to Damon Williams in Washington, Ohio State. If you got a hunch on something this weekend, taking a shot on something in the Heisman, this is a weekend where the numbers are going to change because these big wins move numbers. And with all the big games, whether it's Oregon and Dante Moore, Stockton and Georgia, Damon Williams, kind of choose your fighter. If you're somebody that believes in diversifying and taking a unit or two and splitting among 4 or 5 different guys, this Friday here before all these big games, before this big weekend, might be a time to jump in on somebody.
All right, before we get you out of here, last 90 seconds, I think this is one of the more interesting games of the weekend. Illinois bouncing back against USC potentially. They had a ton of DBs go down, but the injury report and all the reports out of practice, much better for that defensive backfield. What do you make of the Illini at home catching a touchdown against the Trojans?
Yeah, get your MapQuest out. We're going down Narrative Street if we can find it here. It's a lot of narrative stuff, but West Coast team traveling east, early kickoff. Team that was embarrassed last week. You're buying low. The look-ahead line, I think, was 2 on this game. Now we're almost up to a touchdown, some 7 in some spots. I could only look towards Illinois. Look, they were never the 9th best team in the country. We know that. They were completely overrated by that ranking, but they weren't as bad as they showed last week. I think they bounced back and play a close game here. I wouldn't be surprised if this is like a field goal type of game.
Will, always good to talk to you, buddy. And to circle back really quickly before you go, I don't know if you noticed Aaron Rodgers bitching about the travel as well and the setup there. We've already got controversy. A-Rod surprisingly not happy and making it known.
He'll be okay. He'll get over it.
All right, Will, thanks a lot, dude.
See you guys.
That Not The Will Hill up on X. Should have bet more pod. Check all of it out wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you check out vsin.com/subscribe. Get in on those betting splits. You like to use them. They're as little as $9.99 for your first month, among some other things, up at vsin.com. Go to vsin.com/subscribe.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
First Bet and VSiN have teamed up with a special offer for you folks. Open, then deposit into a new First Bet account, and you get up to a $250 sign-up bonus with the promo code VSiN250. Then place $100 in wagers within your first 30 days, and you'll unlock a full year of VSiN Pro. It's a $240 value. If you're already a subscriber, we'll extend your subscription another year. This offer ends Sunday, October 5th. That's coming up. Don't wait. To claim this special offer, promo code VSiN250 when you sign up in the First Bet app or at firstbet.com. Promo code VSiN250. No Stormy Buonantony here on Money Moves today. She's off and getting ready for Iowa State versus Arizona. I believe it's in Ames, Iowa, if I remember my geography correctly. Thank you very much. Not good with the college towns. I am no Tim Murray, which, by the way, speaking of Tim Murray, download the College Football Betting Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Tim does a great job. So no Stormy today. Should be back Sunday for our countdown to kickoff, as we usually are, 9 a.m. Pacific. That is, don't tell me, noon Eastern time, I believe. Yes, that's right. Derek Stevens is always with us at the top of the program, as well as Warren Sharp, as we get you ready for the NFL kickoff on Sunday. So make sure you check that out coming up in a couple of days, vsin.com or YouTube TV, Sirius XM 158, everywhere where you can check out vsin. All right, with that, it is Friday, so we do have another edition of our Market Power Ratings. Really fun exercise we've been doing since the start of the football season. Stormy doesn't really like it that much. That's why we do it on Fridays. But we have a new team. Yes, a new team at the top of our market power rating. So last week, the big story was we have a new worst team in the NFL. And what did we talk about last week? Panthers had taken the title of worst team in the NFL, and we were like, I don't know about that. That seems a little low. And then sure enough, they get a 30-0 win over the Atlanta Falcons and look maybe a little bit better than what the market indicated. Well, we have a new team at the top and a new team at the bottom for week 4. So if we could unveil, if you're watching up on YouTube TV or vsin.com, you see that the Buffalo Bills are our highest-rated team now in the National Football League. I don't think it's a surprise given what we have seen from the Ravens in 2 of the 3 weeks. Market getting a little gun-shy on what Baltimore is. It does mean something for Kansas City as well, which we'll get to momentarily. And then at the very bottom, if you look over in the right-hand column, for those who are listening, don't worry, I got you. On the 73 line, and now the worst team in the NFL once again, the New Orleans Saints. And I don't think that's really a shock. So this weekend, we get the treat of the market's highest-rated team versus the market's lowest-rated team going at it, out there in Buffalo between the Bills and the Saints. So I think there's a lot of different, interesting, unique team stories that we can get to when we look at where we're at. But that Ravens and Chiefs dynamic is the one where you kind of start here, only because of, first, what the Ravens' status was previously as the highest-rated team in the National Football League for the first 3 weeks in the season, but also the fact that a downgrade for Baltimore coincides with a downgrade for the Kansas City Chiefs, as the Chiefs have been kind of steady for our market power ratings the last few weeks. If you look at it, Chiefs were pretty certain along the 84 line each of the first 3 weeks, but now this week, as they find themselves as 2.5-point underdogs at home against the Baltimore Ravens, that would indicate to you at about a 4-point difference on the neutral. Again, 1.5 is our home field advantage that we're using for our market power ratings through the first few weeks of the season, including Thursday night last night. Your median home result is just 1 point. These home teams are only up 3 games over 500 so far to this point of the season. So home field, again, still holding strong at this theory that it's only worth 1.5 points. So to that point, as you look at this here, you see that the Ravens have been downgraded to the 86 line. They've been 88 throughout the entire first 3 weeks of the season. That also means that the Chiefs slip all the way down to the 82 line, downgraded about 2 points, depending on how you're measuring this exercise for the first couple of weeks, making them equals, if you will, to teams like the 49ers, the Broncos, the Colts. Now, Commanders should have a caveat here. News comes down today, and this was after we put this together, that Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin will not play. We have seen the market react to that, and I don't think it was so much just Daniels, because I think we kind of knew his status was still shaky. We didn't really understand if he was going to play or not. But the combination of Daniels being officially ruled out and McLaurin being ruled out as well has knocked this number down quite a bit, or at least the rating on the Washington Commanders, and rightfully so. Atlanta now finds itself as a 2-point favorite here at Circa. So what would that mean? On a neutral, probably about a half point to equals to the Washington Commanders. You see this, that previously before the injuries, the Commanders were above the Atlanta Falcons by about that 2.5 points or so, when that number was still posted with the Commanders as 1-point favorites, with the assumption at the very least Daniels was potentially going to give this thing a go. So a couple of things here that we should build on as we look at these ratings. Let's talk first about what we're going to see in Dublin. The one thing that I've been consistent about, besides my hate, as one person would say up on social media, for Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers, is that the market's been too high on Pittsburgh. Well, we're finally starting to see the market adjust on what the Steelers are. This is an easy exercise, right? They're playing in Dublin. It's a true neutral field. We just take that number. That's the difference between these two teams. Well, the Vikings is 2.5 points better on a neutral than the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers finally get knocked down a peg. Through the first 3 weeks, the Steelers had not budged. They were sitting right on the 81 line in our market power ratings. Well, if you look at this most current iteration, a 78.5 is where we have the Pittsburgh Steelers for this week, according to the betting market. So they finally get downgraded a bit here. Vikings holding steady about an 81 line. Now, of course, that's with J.J. McCarthy, Carson Wentz dynamic. I think that team deserves to be upgraded a little bit here. I think they're closer to equals to teams like the Commanders, Broncos, those Chiefs. Those teams that are above them, and maybe even closer to the Rams, who we'll talk about momentarily. We have a big matchup here. But we finally get it. I've been kind of asking for this. I've been betting against the Pittsburgh Steelers for a while now, in that I thought that the market was too high on this team. The market has adjusted, clearly, on the Pittsburgh Steelers, but has it adjusted enough? By my measure, no. I think they're selling the Vikings a little short here. So Minnesota, as we talked about with Will Hills, we talked about throughout the week, one of the NFL best bets, and we'll have all of those at the end of the next hour coming up here on Money Moves. Let's talk about those Colts, though. Big upgrade for Indianapolis. We've discussed this. This is right in line with where we were at last week. As we had discussed, part of our power ratings for week 3, market dictated there was about 2-point difference between the Colts and the Rams on a neutral. We hold steady with that number here. Rams holding steady at the 84 line on our market power ratings. Colts now on the 82 line as a team, sitting there, of course, with teams like the 49ers, the Broncos, and the Chiefs. And just to give you an idea of how far we have come for Indianapolis at the beginning of the season, when we did our first week of market power ratings, Indianapolis was on the 78.5 line. Now they are up to 82, so they've been upgraded by about 4 points. That's a pretty big upgrade. Might not seem like much on the surface, but in the grand scheme of market ratings, where you're talking about making that climb over the course of 4 weeks, it is a very big upgrade for the Indianapolis Colts. So again, you talk about this exercise of buying low and selling high. You as a bettor have to dictate whether or not this adjustment is warranted. You can make the argument that they should probably be higher. I would love it. But I'm more in the theory of, I think we're probably now right where we should be for Indianapolis. We're still waiting to see if whether or not those warts will appear in the secondary that has been somewhat beat up. And again, Kenny Moore dealing with an injury as well. So that's going to be something to monitor for Indianapolis as we move closer to this kickoff against the Los Angeles Rams. But this is a really fascinating dynamic for this team and where they were at the beginning of the year and where they are at now. All right, let's talk about one dynamic that I had the most trouble with when it came to this week's editions of the market power ratings. That's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who I didn't really know what to do with at this point. So we have a lot of injuries for Tampa Bay, but it sounds like they might be getting somewhat healthier with Wirfs and Godwin and whatever their status is going to be. Now they play the Eagles. Eagles have been consistently right there on about that 86th line throughout our market power ratings exercise. Well, they're there again. The Eagles, the second best team, tied with the Packers and the Ravens from a power rating standpoint, a point behind the Buffalo Bills right now. So they lay 3.5 on the road against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Well, then if you look at, all right, let's make the difference here. If it's 3.5, that would mean a 5-point difference on a neutral or so. They are down, the Buccaneers, to the 81 line right now. Now, why does that matter? Well, the last few weeks, the market had been putting them a little bit higher. So now all of a sudden they take on this Eagles team. Now you can make the argument, well, just move the couplet higher. For, again, this exercise, if you're watching, we are dictating these numbers based off of where the betting market is at for these lines. So if we move Philadelphia, we have to move Tampa Bay with them because they're playing each other. So are you going to put the Eagles up there with the Bills? Are you going to put them higher than the Buffalo Bills? I don't think that would make much sense to upgrade Philadelphia after what we've seen through the first few weeks. So they stay steady there, which means we have to downgrade Tampa, despite the fact that Tampa is 3-0 straight up and against the spread and has been dealing with these injuries in a really strong way. So, in other words, I think that maybe, as somebody who came into this week thinking that Tampa was a play against in this spot, it just seems too low for the Buccaneers with this 3.5 that's out there against this squad and the Eagles, where I think the Buccaneers are just deserving of a little bit more respect. We get the Evans injury. The downgrade makes some sense and when you look at it that prism, but I do think we might be a little too strong here in that regard as well. And then the last point on this, we'll have more on Monday. If we could throw this up one more time. The other thing that led to a play here as well, if I could get your eyes into the second column at the 76.5 line, Browns and Raiders, and just below that at the 76th line, Bengals and Jets. Look at this fall from grace for the Bengals, who are now on the 76th line, just a point ahead of the Panthers, just 3 points ahead of the Saints on a neutral. little too low for my blood. Let's go Bengals. Added them plus 7.5 against the Denver Broncos. We'll have more on that coming up as part of Best Bets. Second hour on the way. When we return, we have 3 games tonight in college football. We'll dive into those, get some score updates in the Ryder Cup, and some important baseball games that are underway as well. Don't go anywhere as the second hour of Money Moves coming at you in 5.